Hey everyone, so I've been saying for some time now that Yamato will not join the Straw Hat Pirates. And at this point, I am pretty much certain that she will not. Now, this might be surprising, as recently we've seen a few things that would seemingly support her case as a potential candidate, namely the fact that Yamato does not know the full secrets of the true history and Raftel, as those pages were torn out of Oden's logbook, as well as Yamato getting a brief, sad backstory. And I will also add that Yamato even finally got a strong display of character, with her speech to Momonosuke that invoked a lot of the messaging around what it means to be free that the Wano arc had been dropping bits and pieces of so far. So at this point, I personally believe that Yamato does have the potential to become a great character, but definitely not a Straw Hat, due to one simple reason that sets apart all Straw Hats from non-Straw Hats. So before we get into it, make sure to subscribe for more One Piece videos every week. And also make sure you keep yourself safe online with Surfshark, the sponsor for this video. Surfshark is the VPN I use. I know many of you use VPNs, and in case you don't, VPNs let you easily change your location online to literally anywhere you want on the planet. So the last time you looked up a TV show or a movie, and you saw that it's only available for streaming in certain countries, you could actually instantly access that with Surfshark VPN. So basically hundreds of more options to select from in terms of anime, movies, and TV. Now the important part is using a secure VPN that encrypts your data. What does that mean? Well, it means that while you're virtually traveling the globe, as long as you're using Surfshark VPN, your personal data is 100% protected, meaning you may as well be invisible. Your personal data cannot be acquired by big companies or cybercriminals, and on top of this, Surfshark VPN automatically blocks ads and malware. You are completely protected no matter where you virtually travel to or what you watch. Not even Surfshark itself knows what you do online. So instant access to countless anime, movies, and TV shows that were blocked for you before, your data completely protected, no ads, no malware, and for my viewers, you can actually get Surfshark right now today for 83% off and 3 months free by using my code MORGE. The link is in the description below. And you get a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you have zero risk. Again, link in the description below. So that aside, today I'm not going to be talking about the usual things when it comes to Straw Hat candidates, like do they have a dream, do they have a sad backstory, is there a role that they can play in the crew, etc. Rather, today I want to talk about something I personally think is more important and more telling when it comes to figuring out who is going to be a Straw Hat. And that is the direction in which Oda writes characters. How does he take them from point A, which is just some random new character they meet, to point B, which is main character who is part of the crew and dedicated to Luffy's journey? Because while you can talk about all of these other things, again like dream, backstory, etc., I think what is most important and not as discussed at the end of the day is the actual character arc. What is the character arc of becoming a Straw Hat? Because that arc is remarkably consistent. Now, I am going to be leaving one Straw Hat out of this discussion at first, as they are the exception, and that is Brook. But there is a very strong reason that he is the exception to the rule, a reason that does not apply to any other character and would not make sense for any other Straw Hat that I will address later. So Brook aside, here is the initial starting point of each Straw Hat's arc. To begin with, each Straw Hat initially does not want anything to do with Luffy. To begin with, each Straw Hat does not want to join his crew. In fact, to begin with, almost every Straw Hat is against this idea in some way. Zoro right off the bat tells Luffy to fuck off and that his moral code will never allow him to be a pirate. Nami refuses as she hates pirates more than anything else in the world. Usopp likes to play pretend pirates, but he's terrified at the thought of meeting real pirates and can't imagine actually being a brave adventurer like he claims to be. Sanji also tells Luffy to fuck off because he thinks he has to live out his life at Baratier rather than chase his own dreams. Chopper refuses to join because he doesn't believe they will ever accept him. Robin technically wanted to join, but in reality it was just supposed to be part of her usual system of crew hopping. She never intended to join them long term, and Robin actually went to by far the greatest extremes of any of the Straw Hats to push the crew away and to leave her alone, as she also believed she would never be accepted by true friends. Frankie was of course an outright enemy of the Straw Hats and was against them for a long time. And finally, Jinbei initially wanted nothing to do with Luffy and flat out refused to help him even for the sake of Ace. So basically, universally, each Straw Hat at the starting point of their story, when they initially meet Luffy, is consistently written to be either anti-Luffy, anti-pirate, anti-Straw Hat, or anti-friends. They all start at an initial point that would make them opposed to joining. Why is that? Well, it's the simplest, most important reason when it comes to a new crew member, and that is the character arc. It's the story of this new character. The new character needs a story. They can't just slot right in because they check off a list. Things like a backstory and a dream, those are things that organically come with each character's overall story, but they are dressing on top of the actual character arc. As at the end of the day, they all need a character arc. And a character arc inherently means taking a character from point A to point B and changing them in some way, giving them some fundamental shift in perspective or worldview, so that by the end of the character arc, they do not think the way they initially did. In fact, Oda generally writes character arcs where a character's entire perspective ends up being the exact opposite of where it initially began. And that is something consistent across the board. Doesn't matter if it's a Straw Hat or not, you can go down the list of all notable character arcs in the series. Almost always where the character ends up is going to be the complete reverse of where they began. And that is why it is necessary and such a constant among all the Straw Hats that where they initially begin, they need to be not ready to join the crew. Rather, they are always framed against Luffy and the crew in some way, for differing reasons. Zoro's moral code, Nami's hatred of pirates, Usopp's fears, Sanji's sense of debt, Chopper's feeling of being a monster, Robin's belief that she is alone, Frankie's burden of guilt, Jinbei's jaded outlook. They all have reasons that frame them in some way that is initially fundamentally incompatible with joining the crew. All of these reasons are rooted in some core character conflict that needs to be resolved. As such, the whole point of the character arcs that they each then undergo is that Luffy is the key to helping them resolve their core character conflict, and in doing so, Luffy changes their perspective and their worldview in some way. He is the inspiration that guides them from point A to point B, such that by the time their character arc is complete, the initial reason that made them fundamentally not want to join Luffy or the crew is resolved. Then the final step in their story is officially joining the crew, as their character conflict has been resolved and Luffy was the key to doing so, so their story ends with them now being on his side when they initially weren't. That is the point. That is storytelling. Each Straw Hat has a story to becoming Luffy's crewmate. It is meaningless if they just started off ready to be his crewmate. There is a necessary character arc they must undergo, guided hand in hand by Luffy into becoming the fully realized version of themselves. And that process is what molds them into becoming a Straw Hat, which is why it's so important that they start out on the opposite side. I see lots of people say that each Straw Hat needs a bond with Luffy, and that's true, but that is again framing it in a sort of checkbox manner, where if Luffy just spends time with them, then that means that some prerequisite is checked off and they're good to go. When it's not that simple, it's not just Luffy spending time or bonding with them. What actually matters is the process of Luffy changing them in some way. What matters is the story that Luffy and that Straw Hat go through together, and the influence Luffy has on transforming them, such that at the beginning they may be opposed to him for some reason or another, but by the end they have changed in a way that not only do they no longer have any problem with Luffy, or being a pirate, or making friends, or whatever their initial issue was, but they now genuinely want to join Luffy and be his supporter. So that brings us to Yamato. The problem with Yamato is that while she does, on the surface, check off the basic boxes to being a Straw Hat. She has a dream, she has a sad backstory, she's made friends with Luffy. Yes, she checks all that. But despite those surface level points, the reality is that in terms of her story, she is written in the exact opposite manner of a Straw Hat. Yamato is introduced, acting as though she is already, right now, a complete Straw Hat. She believes that she is supposed to join Luffy's crew and sail with him to Raftel and she is just ready to do it. And for that very reason, she is the reverse of how every Straw Hat is actually written. Yamato's starting point is essentially every other Straw Hat's end point, which sets up her character arc to actually take her in a different direction. Now, before we get any further, let me address Brook. Brook is the only Straw Hat that was ready to join right away, right? He had nothing against Luffy or pirates or anything like that. He was perfectly happy to join. The only thing holding him back was the logistical issue of his shadow. So if Brook can come in as a ready-to-go Straw Hat, why can't Yamato? Because Brook is the only Straw Hat that did not have or need a character arc. He is the only Straw Hat who was essentially a complete, fully realized character when we met him. Because Brook is unique in a way that no other Straw Hat ever will be. Because Brook is a man who is living his second life. This is a man who has completed his journey as a pirate. He has lived out a full life from start to finish. He has gone on his adventure, experienced a complete story, and come away with it with a fully developed perspective and understanding. Brook is not a character who needs his perspective or worldview changed, because he is the rare exception Straw Hat who is coming in complete. Brook is the only character on the crew and the only character in One Piece who is essentially living out a sequel. That is why so many things about Brook's storyline in Thriller Bark were different. He served to impart wisdom to the Straw Hats rather than be changed by them. He bonded with Luffy, but was never changed by Luffy. He had a backstory, but it came at the end of the arc as an epilogue, not during the main arc like you would usually expect, as there was no fundamental character conflict that needed to be resolved for Brook during the arc the way there normally is with other Straw Hats. Essentially, it's fine if Brook's starting point was the same as the other Straw Hats' endpoints, as Brook is the only Straw Hat who would not need a character arc. His character wasn't going to be taken in a different direction. He had already lived out a life that got him to this endpoint. So basically, Brook is a fundamentally different character. He is the only type of Straw Hat that would ever be written without a character arc, as the point is, this is literally his second life, which is why he is the only Straw Hat that would ever be written to be ready to join from the beginning. Meaning nothing about Brook has any relevance to Yamato, because if we're looking at Yamato, it is very obvious that she is not coming in as some complete character. It is very, very obvious that she is in need of a character arc. Yamato is currently one of the most naive, inexperienced, and sheltered characters we have ever met in the series, with an extremely limited perspective on what's happening in Wano, let alone the world at large or what her true calling is. She has literally based her entire personal identity and goals around a diary that she's been reading in prison. And even though on one hand she is definitely portrayed as insightful in some ways with her philosophy on fighting for freedom, Oda has also been extremely blatant with pushing the fact that Yamato is wildly misguided in other ways, with her obsession of trying to become exactly like Odin clearly being portrayed as delusional, and very obviously in conflict with the overarching theme throughout the Versus 4 Emperors saga of being yourself. Yamato very clearly is going to have a character arc, meaning that if she is starting out thinking that she is a Straw Hat, then it is basically guaranteed that she will not end up as one. She is being written with the reverse arc of every crew member so far. That is how Oda writes pretty much all character arcs across the board. The perspective at the start is flipped on its head hard by the end. And most importantly, with the Straw Hats, Oda is extremely consistent in writing their character arcs to start at a point where they are opposed to joining in some way. As by having them at point A and then writing an arc to take them to point B, that is what gives their story meaning. There's not much substance to any of their stories if they were just happy to join Luffy and his crew from the start. The power of each Straw Hat's story is the arc that takes them there. And finally, just looking at what we have to work with for Yamato's character so far, most of it does frame her arc as ultimately leading to her realization that she should be staying behind in Wano. For one, she literally took away the wrong message from Odin's journal. The idea that Odin should have been adventuring and sailing the world was incorrect. In Odin's own words, he shrugged off his responsibilities to chase his own desires, and learned too late that he should have stayed behind for Wano's sake. If Yamato's goal is to protect and fight for the people of Wano as she says, then she will likely ultimately have that realization as well. Second, through her backstory, we got some insight into the deeper reason why Yamato wants to be Odin, which is that she seemed envious of the way that Odin was beloved by the people of Wano, which suggests her true desire is to have a place among these people, and trying to emulate everything Odin does is just a misguided attempt to achieve that desire. And lastly, Yamato's devil fruit is literally the guardian spirit of Wano. She's staying. So if you agree or disagree, let me know your arguments below. And if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure to hit the link in the description below and use my code MORGE to get 83% off Surfshark and 3 months free.